Hello and welcome. This is We Make Art, and I'm your host, artist, and mentor, Sarah Rockwood. Thank you so much for joining me today in a conversation, in an exploration of a topic that I think is super important to the artistic community at large, to us as artists and creators, to our personal well-being, which is the starving artist and how it can go F itself. Let us discuss the art of being well fed. And I wanted to talk about this today because we have all been exposed to this idea of the starving artist. We have all been exposed to this concept of deprivation equaling devotion, that in order to be a real artist, to be considered heavy, or dare I say even talented, whatever air quotes that means, we have to suffer. We have to starve. We have to sacrifice. We have to give of ourselves to the point of breaking in order to be considered artists. And that is bullshit. This today, I really didn't want it to be a rant, and I am going to do my utmost to not rant in here because I don't think that that's helpful. And I think for some listeners who maybe haven't explored the idea of challenging these kinds of idioms and things we're presented with, it could rub you the wrong way, and that is not my goal with this podcast. With all of my work, is to give us a place where we can take a deep breath, where we can let our shoulders relax and examine what we truly want from our art making, what makes us feel creative and in flow and nourished by our artistic experience and the way we move in the world with that. So rather than spending X number of minutes, however long this podcast ends up being, ranting about how the starving artist can go F itself, I want this to be a conversation of reclamation, because I truly believe and have experienced in my own life that abundance makes better art. When we are operating from a place of true safety in ourselves, I do think we make better art. However you define better. And I'm going to throw it in here that, to me, better art is art that doesn't deplete you, that doesn't drain you. The starving artist is not just about money. Money is a factor of that, but it is this idea of depletion, that we should leave our works of art in a worse off state than we went in. That idea of leave it all on the stage, leave it on the dance floor. These turns of phrase that we are presented with that kind of define whether or not our art is any good. Those can go F themselves. We are presented again and again, the starving artist myth, with the depletion, with the deprivation, with the sacrifice for the making of art. But then we are praised for that. When we are praised for that, we get stuck in that cycle, and sooner or later, it becomes our lifestyle. It becomes the lifestyle. I have spent many, many decades. I'm only 46, but I started when I was 9. And I really spent many decades living in a state of borderline exhaustion and making good art in that time. making works of art that I'm very, very proud of, but I'm not proud of how I allowed myself to be treated and to live how I lived while making that art. So it becomes a double-edged sword for me when I look at those works of art that I created, when I listen to my music, when I read through stories that I've written. I am torn because I love the work itself, but I am flooded with these memories of how hard it was, how badly I treated myself and then was treated by others. We'll get into that. And I don't want those memories again. I don't want to have that same experience from here on out when I make art. I want to be able to look back on the work I've created and go, wow, the art was amazing and I grew. I left that artistic project more nourished, with a deeper understanding of myself, with more abundance in my life than I did going in. And that is a new experience for a lot of us. And there is a false promise. Is it a false promise? I guess sometimes it works for people. There is this kind of promise in the starving artist paradigm that if you keep sacrificing, and I will say this comes more from people within the industry, not necessarily the world at large, society at large, which gives us different messages around the starving artist. But within the industry, that starving artist, that if you keep sacrificing, if you keep paying your dues, it'll work out. You'll succeed. You'll make it. Whatever that means, air quotes. You'll make it. But you can't also make it too big because then you're a sellout. Then you haven't sacrificed enough. So it's the push and pull that leaves, I think, I was going to say impressionable artists, but I think we're all impressionable, easy for me to say. I think we're all impressionable as artists because we are more open to the unseen in this world, to the emotional things of this world, to the, for lack of a better term, the esoteric of this world. So when we are bombarded, it is intoned to us over and over again, this starving artist paradigm, the starving artist lifestyle, we are affected by that. It is imprinted on us. You know, we get these signals or these messages from people within the industry, but then from without the industry, from the outside of the industry, we hear things like art is a luxury. Art is a luxury. And this one, it drives me so nuts because the world runs on art. Every single person who's got one of these little pocket computers. For those of you just listening, I was holding up my pocket computer, aka my cell phone. For all of us, we have these little pocket computers in our pockets, yes, in our hands, and they open to a world of art. How many people do you know are on the apps, are on the TikTok, on the Instagram, on the YouTube? Like, oh my God, I just realized how old that made me sound. They're on the YouTube, but they are. And those are, apps that run on art. We call it content now. And I think we call it that to, in some ways, I'm thinking on the fly here, guys. You know that's dangerous. I think we call it content rather than, than art, because it allows, or it makes it safe to then make money from it. You know? The content creator, the content creation, is that just a different label that allows for commerce to be a part of the situation? And it's interesting when money becomes part of the equation, when when I say the universal we, I'm not trying to call out any individuals here, but when we look at an artist that is making money from their art, there is at times an outcry, a push against that. I think about some of the discourse I've heard around Taylor Swift in the past year or two or whatever, her whole career, let's say it. But in this last little while, when she's really cemented herself as not just one of the biggest artists in the world, but one of the savviest businesswomen in the arts. Well, no, why am I qualifying that? One of the savviest businesswomen, one of the savviest businesswomen out there. There is so much pushback as to whether the art is still legit or whether or not it's just a cash grab and all these things. And I am always amused to see that it is. I'm going to say it. I'm always amused to see that it is generally the people, creators, artists that perhaps struggle with their finances. I'm just going to say it. It's always the people who don't have a lot of money that are bitching about people who have big money. And I mean, and it's always directed in such a personal attack kind of way. You know, the whole the adage that comes to mind is like, don't hate the player, hate the game. Like, why are you hating on Taylor Swift specifically when there's a whole system of capitalism that you're free to deconstruct and rail against all you want? But ask yourself why you're getting angry at a woman who has made making money part of her artistic expression and career. And we don't all have to do that. We don't all have to make money from our art. It doesn't make your art more important, noble, valid to be making money from it. It doesn't. It's part of our individual expression and how we define success for ourselves. And one of the big cultural messages around this starving artist, one of the things that keeps us stuck in this thing of depletion is the myth of exposure. You should be grateful for the exposure. The number of times we as artists are asked to do things for free in exchange for exposure is insane. It's insane. It's far too prevalent a thing. I mean, you know, oh, can you play my friend's christening? It'll be great exposure. How? like exposure is something we all have access to now. I'm going to go back to the pocket computer. And I should recognize that and I want to say this, that not everyone has access to a smartphone, and not everyone has access to an internet. I am sounding so Gen X on this podcast today, and I'm not. I swear to God, I'm like kind of a millennial. I don't know. I think technically I'm a zennial, that little micro generation between the Gen Xers and the millennials. Anyway, because I don't really identify with either one. But there we go. Yes, we all have these little phones in our pockets that can broadcast us all over the world. And yes, I do recognize that is at times like screaming into the void. And yes, there is something to be said for being seen by new people in lots of different ways, like the christening, like the charity car wash, like singing in church, like doing, I don't know why I went with two Christian examples there. Let's come up with another one. Singing in the local coffee shop for nothing, except maybe a cup of coffee. It is important for our work to be seen by people. But part of the process of releasing the starving artist paradigm is to examine these moments and opportunities and determine if they truly align with the vision you have for your life and how you how you define success for yourself. Taking each individual offer and putting it through the lens of what is best for you. And I think the idea of sacrifice being so important to not just making art, but also making it as an artist, being seen as a real artist. I think in a lot of ways that lie, and it is a lie, is perpetuated by people who were also told that lie, who also sacrificed and suffered and really felt wronged by that process. But rather than look at it and examine it and determine what they really want for themselves, they're going to just keep perpetuating it. And it becomes an abusive cycle that we are all asked to participate in. You know, it's that thing in theater school where, like, you know, just like the teacher who maybe didn't get cast in the role that you're now doing the monologue from in the classroom, and it's, which I have seen happen in theater school, where someone would come up and, like, you know, students really scared because they know that the teacher auditioned for this part and came really close for it in the premiere Broadway production, and now they're trying to do the part in class, and, like, how is the teacher reacting? And the teacher's coming at it from, well, and it's this, there's fear there. I have made so much art while being scared. And again, I think the art was really good. I don't think I had to be scared to make it. And I don't like that when I look back on those pieces of art, I remember a very scared woman, girl, making those works of art. I want different for us. I want better for us. You know, this is in the 2000s-ish. I was trying to get into doing voiceover commercials, like, you know, singing and speaking for commercials. Yeah, you get it. It's not a complicated topic, Sarah. And I wasn't in the union, which made getting jobs difficult. It was that chicken and the egg thing of, like, well, if you were in the union, we'd hire you, but you need to get a job to get into the union. And I'd be like, okay. So I finally got a gig, because it was non-union, because it was going to be under the table. And they told me I would get a cash payout, which I think was like $300, which at the time felt like a lot of money. But wait for it. So I go to do the gig, and I'm told, okay, you're going to do this gig. It's going to be under the table, but we know you're going to do a good job. You'll get other jobs. We'll give you other contracts, and you'll work your way. We'll figure out how to get you into the union and doing stuff. So I'm like, okay, great. I will take this under the table gig. Don't really want to, but I will, because I'm being told that this is the sacrifice I need to make in order to get to where I want to be. And I'm not going to tell you what the product was for obvious reasons. But yeah, it was a really awkward session. They wanted me to make these pow sounds, like pow, pow. And you guys have heard me talk. I don't really have... I mean, in my mind, I sound like Kathleen Turner, but I know that out there in the real world, I sound like Julie Andrews. So, you know, I'm trying to make these pow sounds, and they're like, can you make it rougher? Can you make it rougher? And I'm like, pow. And they're like, can you not hurt your voice? And I'm like, I don't know what you want me to do. Like, I really, we've exhausted my pow options here. So yeah, the session ended, and I was like, I don't even know if I've done a good job. Like, this is so brutal. And I get my check. for my $300. And then as I'm leaving, oh, this was such a kicker. As I'm leaving, the one of the ad executives spots my tattoos, and he's like, "Oh, you have tattoos?" I'm like, "Yeah, here we go. You can clearly see them." And he's like, "I have a tattoo as well." I'm like, "Okay." And then he comes up to me and he like starts caressing my shoulder. He's like, "It's right here. It's right." Doesn't roll up the sleeve of his t-shirt to show me. No, uses my body to caress me and let me know where physically his tattoos are. And I'm like, "Oh wow, that's really cool." And I just pulled my shoulder out from under his hand and then looked at him, and he looked at me, and then his face went completely blank and he walked away. And I was like, good to know. Good to know. I'm going to end this session with a little sexual harassment. Harassment? Oh, God, it did feel like a rash. Harassment in the mix of it. And then, cash my check thinking great things are going to happen. Never got called by that company again. Don't know if that was because I pulled my shoulder out from under the man's hand or if I just didn't nail those pows properly. But the commercial I did ran for 3 years. 3 years. And I never saw another penny. And I never got into the union. But I was like, I'd paying my dues, keep trying, keep pushing. So if we are to reframe this, if we are to release this starving artist malarkey and truly embrace the art of being well fed, we need to look at the different areas of our lives and define them for ourselves and how they relate to our art and what we truly desire from our art and our art making. I mean, for me, I have been grappling is not the right word. Really exploring and milling over and coming back to this idea that art is an energy, like love and like gratitude, that I am in conversation with, that we are in conversation with. So art making is something I do. Artist is something I am. And art is an energy I move with, that I carry with me, that I cultivate. So when I think about embracing being well fed and what true devotion to my art, I'm not even going to say to my art, my devotion to art as, how hard can I hit those T's, everyone? Art. When I think about that devotion to art and how through that devotion I can then be nourished, I think we got to look at a few areas and we need to define them for ourselves. And a big one is boundaries. I'm still working on boundaries. I am still working on boundaries. I can tell you last week I had like a full, I don't want to say crisis, but it was almost a crisis of boundary related issues that I had to really go, no, Sarah, put your self-love hat on and shut this down. And I did. And the world didn't end. And the person didn't get crazy. And believe me, I was prepared for some crazy. And I had multiple emails drafted to reinforce my art. No, nothing happened. They literally disappeared. It was wonderful. I threw down my boundary gauntlet and they were like, and they ran away. But there was a time, there were many years where I would answer texts in the shower. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if other people ever did that. I don't know how crazy. I'm just going to share it. I would literally be in the shower and hearing my phone go off and like, okay, soap in my hair, get the soap out of my eyes, and like tick, 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 doing my text messages. I get texts like, oh, we've sent you an email with the demo or whatever. And I'm like listening to demos in the shower, going, okay, yep, that's great. Maybe change this, maybe change it. Like it never stopped. And when we can, so there were no boundaries there, is what I'm trying to say. You'd think that cleansing oneself would be like a boundary, but it wasn't for me then. I mean, it is now, of course, but it wasn't for me then. And rest. What do you want from rest? What do you need? Not even what you want. Let's start with what you need. What's the bare minimum of rest that you need? Are you getting it? That's the first port of call. Oh God, the metaphors are starting. But let's look at what is rest mean to you in this season of life, right? Because we have to then acknowledge, and this is what my course, Embracing an Art-Filled Life, will delve into with you and help you figure out all these little itty bitty parts for yourself. But like, we have to define what season of life we're in and what does rest mean in this season. Because rest looks very different for me, childless by choice, to someone with, 2 little ones. And financial flow. As I mentioned earlier, making money from your art is not a requirement for the validation of your art. And yeah, I'm like, can I do the flip reverse? I think I said the flip and reverse in one sentence. So you know what I'm saying? So making money from the art is not a requirement. But we do live in capitalism. We haven't reached the Star Trek utopia yet of just, we receive for merit, not for financial gain, or for personal expression. I can't remember the exact quote because it's been a while since I was super into Star Trek. But as I went to high school in the 90s, so, we all had our Jean-Luc Picard fantasy stretch there. I digress. Financial flow. I lived for years and years and years with just enough. Just enough. Paycheck to paycheck, just enough. And that is not something I tolerate anymore. I deserve more than enough. You deserve more than just enough. We truly do. But when we're in the arts and we've been told that it is a luxury and that and money will taint your ability as an artist and yada, 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 we starve ourselves on all levels. There's an excellent book I will throw in here as a little bonus resource called Overcoming Under-Earning. I cannot remember the author's last name, Barbara something. She's changed her last name a couple times, so I can't remember the last name. But it's a really good book. Lots of work pages. Yes, that's the term. Questions, things like that to help you really start to look at what is behind under-earning. Because I'll say this flat out. If working really hard was the key to financial success, then 98% of the people I know, in particular, and maybe even 99% of the women I know, would be multimillionaires. Everyone I know, pretty much everyone I've ever met in the arts, in particular, every woman I've ever met in the arts has worked so fucking hard. So if that was the secret, we'd all be, Bezos's. Yeah. And there are practical components to this. Like, are you well fed? And I always hesitate to discuss actual nutrition in this setting because I don't want to trigger anyone. And I myself have dealt with disordered eating in the past. And I know it's a struggle for me as well to recognize, like, when I'm, mm, well, I won't say it's still a struggle, but it has been a struggle to grapple with just how poorly I nourished myself. I mean, there's, and again, this is a big part of the music business, that you do like a 10-hour day in the studio and get one meal break. And like, yeah, there'd be like a little table out with some snacks on it, but that's not taking care of the vessel. I mean, not when we're doing high level physical and mental activity. We need to be well fed. So what does that mean for you and your body and your work? You are allowed to explore that. You are allowed to define that for yourself. And you are allowed to set up a life that allows for it and supports you being well nourished, as well as emotionally held. As well as emotionally held. And I've said this several times in this episode alone, and I'll keep talking about it, but it blows my mind, the work I did when terrified. And I wasn't the only person who was scared in those rooms. I mean, there's something about the arts, like, and the sort of theater school. And when I say theater school structure, I mean every kind of classroom, from the voice programs through the dance programs through the visual arts programs. I have heard so many stories of just everyone is afraid of the teacher. And we're all ripping ourselves open and exposing really intimate parts of ourselves in our work, but we're all doing it while terrified of the teacher and seeking the approval of the teacher. And that just, I hate it. So it's creating spaces and feeling empowered to create spaces where we are emotionally held and where we can emotionally hold other people. And this goes back to boundaries and figuring out what those are for us, because it's very hard to support others, to nurture others, when we are not supporting and nurturing ourselves. It's not impossible. I mean, we all have done it. We all do it. But it's very challenging and stressful, and we don't have to have it that way. We don't have to live that way. So my big question to you is, what kind of art would you make if you were well rested, well fed, and well loved? Think about that. Well fed, well rested, and well loved. What could you create if you were no longer in survival mode? When I was in college, I had a pretty big fight with one of my good friends, because I've always been a little bit forthright. As you listen to this podcast, I'm pretty clear cut, and I generally have been. Yes, I've had lots of trauma and things to unpack, but usually I'm pretty forthright with what I'm saying. And this was in my final year of college. I was hanging out with a girlfriend, and that last year of college, I've shared a bit of this on other podcast episodes. I had a horrible parasitic infection, so I'd lost about almost 30 pounds in like 2 months, and I that summer, just before this, the year just before, my boyfriend, the love of my life, whatever. It's sorry, I laugh because it's like, phew. He dumped me, and I'd had this like huge personality change, and not personality change, this huge like liberation, because he was, it was not a good relationship. But whatever, I was like 20, 21, whatever that is. And I got really heavily into drugs. drugs and pot mostly, some shrooms. But I mean, I was a drug addict for sure. One day I got to do an episode on the whole getting sober process because that was interesting. And it did affect my art making, but that's a tale for another time. Yeah, so I was really heavily into drugs. I was very, very sick. I was smoking cigarettes like there was no tomorrow. Like I just was kind of a mess, but I was still getting stuff done in school and I was still performing and like I was assistant directing one of our main stage. No, it wasn't main stage. It was in the studio productions, one of our final year productions, and I also directed another play. And then we had our general exams. Like, it was going hell for leather. Horribly burnt. Like, there were times when my jaw would lock up so tight from like all the smoking and stress that I'd be like, and I'm just eating fuzzy peach rings by the bucketful. Like, it was just brutal. And I said to my friend, probably too boldly or forthrightly, and maybe unkindly, I was like, wow, imagine what we could have done if we weren't like getting high and smoking cigarettes all the time. And, imagine what we could have done. And she got so mad at me. So mad at me. What the fuck are you talking about? I've worked so hard. I've done this. I did that. And she had leads in both of the shows. I never had a leading part for political reasons. No, whatever. Every once in a while, we've talked about this before. I had another layer of the onion where I'm like, ooh, still a bit of bitterness there. Just a little bit of bitterness. Oh, but she got really mad at me. And I was like, no, you don't understand. Like, I know that we've done really good things. I'm just wondering how much better it could have been if I hadn't been high every day. If I hadn't been smoking cigarettes all the time. Like, I was sick all the time. No wonder, because I was getting high all the time. My apartment was like brutal. Like, there was so much drama. And she was just very angry with me. She was like, you're calling me lazy. You're calling me this. And I'm like, no, I just wondered if there was better. I just wondered if there was better than this. And now, 25 years later, yeah, there is better than that. We do get to look at our lives and define what we want from them. I was going to say abundance, but you get to define what your life looks like. And then you get to take steps towards creating that life. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's simple. I'm saying it's doable. I'm saying it's doable. And I am living proof of softness being an option. I have softened so much in the past 3 years. I don't recognize myself. I look at old pictures of myself, I'm like, damn. So the energy is just so sharp and brittle and fearful. Like I'm afraid of being exposed at every single turn. And now I'm soft. I'm not weak. There's no weakness there. In fact, I'm stronger than I've ever been. I'm more forthright than I've ever been. I'm more comfortable in my skin than I've ever been. And my art making feels more nourishing than it's ever felt. And I want that for all of us. There is a world where we can all lay our armor down and soften into that conversation, that experience of the energy of art moving through us and shaping and crafting a life that nourishes us, that is abundant. We do not have to starve to be seen as real artists. We do not have to deplete ourselves for our work to be considered worthy. You are worthy. Period. End of sentence. We need no more qualifiers on that. Let's take that as read and let's build lives of true abundance for ourselves. Whatever abundance means for you. And it all starts with just entertaining the question of what could you accomplish? What could you create? What would life feel like if you were well rested, well fed, and well loved? That's it. That's it. Start with that question and let it all ripple out from there. Let the shoulders ease. Take a nice deep breath and let it all percolate. This is, this is why, we've got the art of return and all these, this work. It's about coming back to the self. Because I'm asking you to entertain that question, but the truth is, somewhere within you, the answer already exists. We just get still. We get quiet and we give ourselves a moment to think about it. And listen, and the answer generally bobs to the surface. See, I'm going too hard. I'm going too hard with the metaphors again. I don't even know if I'm using the word metaphor right. You know when you start saying something and you've said something over and over again, you're like, is that what that word means? Or you, like simple words where you're like, hang on, is that how you pronounce? Is that how you say hello? Like it just random moments of like, what the, yeah. The beauty of the perimenopausal brain. Anyway, I digress. Thank you so much for listening. If this has stirred anything in you, this conversation, then link is down in the show notes. Head over to Rockwood Alchemy. I have a number of offers there that will meet you in whatever season of life you are in now and help you build a life of abundance and art on your terms. Thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you later. Bye.